chapter 16, verse 39. So quick recap, these set of verses are the glorifications by Chitraketu on getting darshan of Lord Sankarshan. Verse 39. So quick recap, these set of verses so if you remember, the last verse we did last week was him glorifying the devotees of the Lord, and he glorifies them through one is through condemnation of those who are not devotees. Right. So last verse he actually condemned those who had material desires and who were worshipping the demigods. In this verse, he will glorify the devotees. So by contrast, he glorifies the devotees, one by condemning the non-devotees, and then second is explicit glorification of the devotees. So beginning from 616, verse 39. कामतयस्त्वयिरचिता न परमर्हन्ति यथा कर्म बीजानि जना जनात्मया अगुन्मये गुणज्ञातु स्वयद्वन्द्वजालानि. O Supreme Lord, if persons obsessed with material desires for sense gratification through material opulence worship you, who are the source of all knowledge and are transcendental to material qualities, they are not subject to material rebirth, just as sterilized or fried seeds do not produce plants. Living entities are subjected to the repetition of birth and death because they're conditioned by material nature. But since you're transcendental, one who is inclined to associate with you in transcendence escapes the conditions of material nature. Right? And so the analogy that is used over here is that of seeds. So when the seeds are roasted, then even if they are spread on a fertile land, they will still not sprout. And so the analogy is that the seeds are like desires. But when the desires are placed in the material, in the Supreme Lord, they are like roasted seeds. Now, from our earlier study in the Bhagavad Gita, we know the underlying tattva that Chitraketu is talking about. He's essentially talking about nishkam karma. And so when activities that are performed without a desire for material enjoyment. So even though they look like karma, so the seeds look like seeds, but because there is no desire to enjoy, they're actually roasted seeds. Now, interestingly, in both the verses, Chitraketu is talking about people with material desires. But the difference is that in the previous verse, he condemned them. In this verse, is glorifying them. And what's the difference between the two? The difference is that in the previous verse, he spoke about those who had material desires that were going to the devas, the demigods, and he was condemning them. Right? Here, he is still talking about those who have material desires, but they go to the Lord. So that's why he uses an analogy of seeds, that they are still seeds, so they're still material desires. But because they are reposed in the Lord, they lose their ability or their propensity to sprout. So material desires, when they are nourished, they produce a whole tree of other material desires, but not these material desires that are reposed on the Lord. So Prabhupada says that those who are obsessed with material desires may also come to worship the Supreme Lord so steadily they may go back to God. The fact is, if one comes to Krishna consciousness, although he may have many material desires, he becomes increasingly attracted to the lotus feet of Krishna through associating with the Supreme Lord by chanting his holy name. Vishnu Chakravarti, in his purport, he uses another analogy to explain this. He says that um, uh, when an object falls into a well of juice, it becomes juicy, even though the object itself may not be originally juicy. So, similarly, when material desires are reposed towards the Lord, they become spiritual. Right? And then he says, then how can these desires result in a continuation of samsara, which is the cycle of birth and death? So one of the examples in this that is given is Dhruv Maharaj. Right? Dhruv Maharaj went to the Lord with with material desires, and and it is mentioned that um, even though he was ashamed of them, even though he said that, please do not fulfill my material desires, the Lord still fulfilled his material desires. Right? And the acharyas give an interesting take on this, that the Lord fulfilled the material desires of Dhruva not because he felt that Dhruva needed them. Because when you have the darshan of the Lord, then all traces of material desires are removed. And that's the nature of of uh, associating with the Lord. Right? So especially when you are getting face to face direct darshan of the Lord, then there is no question of any material desires remaining. So there was no question of Dhruva still having desires to take the throne of his father or get a kingdom bigger than um, Brahma, etc. But still, the Lord fulfilled his material desires, and the reason is for the benefit of others. That uh, uh, when a materialist looks at the pastime of Dhruv Maharaj, then he may not get that much inspiration from Dhruva going back to Godhead. But he will get more inspiration from the fact that the Lord bestowed 36,000 years of sovereignty on Dhruva Maharaj. So in the third canto, Lord Kapila, he explains this with an analogy that when a king gives in charity, he may have very, very exclusive, exquisite diamonds and gems that are worth hundreds and thousands of golden coins. But when he sits in public and gives charity, he will only give gold coin in charity. Why? Because when he's giving it out in common public, they may not understand the value of diamonds and gems. And so when the king gives, he may give one diamond, which may be worth 20,000 golden coins. But the people looking at it might say, this king is a miser. Like he's just giving in his palm of his hand, he's giving a small piece that looks like glass to the Brahmin. Whereas if he gave a bag of 100 coins, then everybody would say, this king is really magnanimous. And similarly, when the Lord gives benedictions, then only a very few devotees can understand the exclusive nature of him bestowing bhakti. The majority of the people, if the Lord had just bestowed bhakti, would think that what's the point in going to Lord Vishnu? You go to him, Dhruva went to him asking for a kingdom, and the Lord said, okay, you give up your body and come back to me. better to go to one of the demigods. So the flow so far has been that Chitraketu in his prayers, he had glorified the Lord, the qualities of the Lord. Then he has now glorified the devotees, both by saying what they are not and what they are. Now in the next 4 verses, he will glorify the relationship between the Lord and the devotees. Or more specifically, he will glorify Bhagavad Dharma or Bhakti. Verse 40. जितं मचीता तदा भवता यदाह भागवतं धर्म अनवद्यं निष्किञ्चना ये मुनया आत्माराम्यम् उपासते अपवर्गया. O unconquerable one, when you spoke about Bhagavad Dharma, which is the uncontaminated religious system for achieving the shelter of your lotus feet, that was your victory. Persons who have no material desires, like the Kumaras, who are self-satisfied sages, worship you to be liberated from material contamination. In other words, they accept the process of Bhagavad Dharma to achieve shelter of your lotus feet. So now he's beginning the glorification of Shuddha Bhakti. So in the previous verses, when describing the relationship between the devotee and the Lord, Chitraketu was speaking about Kama Mishra Bhakti. Right? So even when he was glorifying the devotees, then he was saying better that with the material desires, they go to the Lord. That's a case of Mishra Bhakti, Kama Mishra Bhakti. So now he is saying that how much more if one is following Shuddha Bhakti. Right? So this is as we have seen in the past, this is Kaimutika Nyaya, which is the Nyaya rule of how much more, A fortiori. So it's a way of saying that if a weaker point is established, how much more will the stronger point be? Like saying that uh, if this king can conquer this powerful enemy, then how much more easier for him to conquer a weaker one, right? So it's basically the the rule of how much more. So this verse explains what is the Lord's victory over the devotees, right? So in the first verse of his prayers, that was verse 34, Chitraketu had glorified the Lord as Ajit Jita Sama Matabi Shadubir. Right, so Ajit is the unconquerable Lord. Jita is he is conquered by whom? By the Samamatibi Shadubir. So the Samamatibi Shadubir is the quality of his pure devotees. So Chitraketu had said that because the Lord allows himself to be conquered by his pure devotees, that quality of the Lord conquers his devotees. Right? So it's when the devotees see the humility and pure affection in the Lord, by which the Lord says that I will become subservient to you. That quality conquers the Lord. Right? So by following the Bhagavad Dharma, the Lord allows himself to be conquered. So in this verse, Chitraketu, he talks about how does the Lord conquer his devotees. So he says that when he spoke the Anavadyam means faultless, Bhagavad Dharma, the Lord conquered his devotees. So generally the word anavadyam is used to describe the Lord, that the Lord is faultless. Here it is used to describe Bhagavad Dharma or Bhakti. Right? So the Lord is conquered by Nishkam Bhakti. Right? But what is the process to follow Nishkam Bhakti? That process is also given by the Lord. Right? So that is the good quality of the Lord. It's like a person saying that that even though I'm unconquerable, there is a secret way in which you can conquer me. And here is the way. And so when the devotees look at this munificence of the Lord, they are they are they are conquered. So the verse talks about three kinds of people who follow the Bhagavad Dharma. So the first are the Nishkinchana. So Nishkinchana are those who have no desire to be happy with material opulences. Or Nishkinchana also means that those who are pure from the beginning. The second is Munya. These are the great philosophers and exalted sages. Right? And Vishwanath Chakravarti says, these are the sages who, by the association of great devotees, have given up their previous ideas of speculative philosophy. And the third is the Atmaramas. So those who are self-satisfied. So why are they self-satisfied? What is the foundation of one being an Atmarama? Because they have completely become settled in their constitutional position as eternal servants of the Lords. Right. So they have understood that their position is to serve the Lord, and because that service by nature is satisfying, they are fully satisfied. Right? Or some Jivan Muktas. So Jivan Muktas are those who are eternally liberated, who have achieved their position and follow that Dharma. Vishwanath Chakravarti states that the Atma Rama and Munya can also be considered to modify Nishkinchana, which would then translate the verse to that the pure devotees who have continuously contemplated you, Munya, and derive pleasure from you, Atmarama. So the word Munya and Atmarama are modifying Nishkinchana. They follow the Bhagavad Dharma. So Chitraketu then talks about that what is the goal of the person who follow this Bhagavad Dharma. He says, Yam upasate apavargaya. So typically it means who worship for achieving liberation from material bondage. And, but here apavargaya means that for that goal to which the four vargas of dharma are inferior, artha kama and dharma and moksha. So apavargya then means prema or bhakti. So essentially, the verse, if you step away from some of the more analytical translation, is Chitraketu talking about the pure devotees whose only goal is to satisfy the Lord, who fall in love with the Lord because they see how the Lord loves them, attain the supreme destination. So Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he gives three references to this definition of Bhagavad Dharma or Shuddha Bhakti. Right, and three very famous verses. One is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Anibilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadhyana Avrutam. The second is from Nad Panchrata Sarupadi Vinirmuktam Tat Pratvela Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. And the third is the from Srimad Bhagavatam सवाई पुंश परो धर्मो ये तो भक्ति रदोक सजे. In the next verse, we will see that Chitraketu will criticize that which is not bhakti. Verse 41. Vishvamati na yatra nanam tam ahamiti mam taveti cha yadannitra vishmadhiya rachitoya sahaya vishuddha kshenushur shayushnura dharma bahula. Being full of contradictions, all forms of religion but Bhagavad Dharma work under the conception of fruitive results and distinctions of you and I, and yours and mine. The followers of Srimad Bhagavatam have no such consciousness. They are all Krishna conscious, thinking that they are Krishna and Krishna's is theirs. There are other low-class religious systems which are contemplated for the killing of enemies or the gain of mystic powers. But such religious systems, being full of passion and envy, are impure and temporary. Because they are full of envy, they are full of irreligion. So, glorification of Bhagavad Dharma and condemnation of that which is not Bhagavad Dharma. Right? So, in Bhakti Yoga, Chitraketu says, there is no concept of you and I or I and mine. Other than Bhakti Yoga, even if one follows Dharma for material gains, this conception of you and I and mine will be there. To what extent will it be there? He says, to the extent that one may follow Dharma to kill an enemy or for gross material gains. That is the extent in which the Kamya Dharma may be practiced. He says that this Dharma is so impure that it is full of the duality of attraction and hatred. And because of that, everything that it delivers is subject to destruction, since the results are temporary. And then actually he says that actually Kamya Dharma is adharma because it is based on violence. Now, violence does not always mean fighting with others or killing others. Violence also means violence on the self, violence on the spiritual nature of one's existence. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti in his purport says that Swaraswami has noted that both dharma and adharma are seen in the rules of Kamya Dharma. So the first three lines of the verse describes the consciousness of those who follow Kamya Dharma. So they are Vishmamatir, unequal consciousness resulting in my religion and your religion. And they are Vishmadhiya, which is unequal intelligence resulting in me and mine. And then in the last line of the verse, three adjectives are used to describe the Kama Dharma, that it is avishuddha, that it is completely impure. Shuddha is pure, and Vishuddha is very pure, and avishuddha is very impure. Then it is kshanishu, which means that kshana, only for a few moments, is temporary. And then adharma bahula, it is full of irreligion. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he highlights the difference between. Prabhupada is a long purport, and he systematically goes and highlights the differences between Kamya Dharma and Bhagavad Dharma. Right? First, he explains on why it is not Vishwamatir. Vishwamatir means me and your religion. And he said the conception of your religion and my religion was, are completely absent in Bhagavad Dharma. Sarva dharma pratyaja mam ekam sharanam braj. Right? Because there is only one dharma, which is Anukurera Krishnano Shilana Bhakti Bhaktamam. Then he explains Vishamaya Dhiya. Like Vishamaya Dhiya is unequal intelligence in me and mine. So he says one who is in Krishna consciousness cannot have any enemies, since the only engagement is to induce others to surrender to Krishna. Right? If one educates the Hindu religion, the Muslim religion, the Christian religion, this religion or that religion, there will be conflicts. Right? Now, one might say that what's the basis of this statement? That one who is in Krishna consciousness cannot have any enemies. We know that Prahlad Maharaj had an enemy, his own father. We know Haridas Thakur had an enemy, he was beaten. So how can one say that you cannot have any enemies? The understanding is that they thought themselves as enemies to the devotees, but the devotees never considered them to be their enemies. Haridas Thakur was praying for the people who were beating him. Same thing with Prahlad Maharaj. Right? So when it is said that the devotees have no enemies, does not really mean that they will have nobody inimical to them. Sometimes more people become inimical to devotees, but what it means is that the devotees do not consider them as enemies. They are equally compassionate and merciful to them. So Prabhupada in the purport also strongly condemns religions that that create this kind of divisiveness. So he says, so-called religions are meant for a particular type of person who believe in a particular way. Such discrimination has no place in Krishna consciousness or Bhagavad Dharma. There are many activities directed towards there are many activities directed against such religious system. Everyone should believe in God and surrender unto Him. This is Bhagavad Dharma. And in the last, Prabhupada writes a long purport over here. And lastly, then Prabhupada compares Bhagavad Dharma with the Mayavadis. Then, and then he writes the same difference between the impersonalist and the personalist. So summary of the Bhagavad Dharma. One is carry out the order of Krishna. Second, no conception of me and mine. Third, that Bhagavad Dharma considers the material world to be real, but an energy of the Lord. And the devotees are not envious of anyone, they are well-wishers of everyone. And because everything emanates from the Lord, nothing can be false, and the results are permanent. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Chandkazi, he said he told him that your scriptures are full of false. Right? So Vaishnavas will appreciate others' religions for preaching purposes or out of respect to their sentiments. However, they recognize the fundamental faults in the religion which promotes violence and divisiveness. Right? So the Muslims would steal the deities from the Hindu temples and then use the marble to make steps for their slaughterhouses or mosques. Then similarly, the Christians, they regularly condemn Vaishnavas as idol worshippers and tribals, ancient, that are rooted in ancient. So that's the difference, that the Abrahamic religion is based on exclusivity, that they justify their own existence by condemning the existence of everybody else. The Vedic religion is based on inclusivity while recognizing differences. So, inclusivity does not mean that you say all paths are the same, all religions are the same, all scriptures are the same. That becomes secularism in a way. It almost becomes atheism, right? When you say everything is the same, you mean it means nothing. What inclusivity means is that you recognize the value of different religions, but also recognize the differences. Right? Because if a Vaishnav says all religions are same, then the Christian will say, okay, why don't you follow Christianity from tomorrow? And then what will the person say? He'll say, well, they are the same, but not really the same. So this concept of inclusivity has to be modified by saying inclusive while recognizing differences. So then the person will say, yes, I do understand Christianity is a bona fide way for a people with a certain consciousness. But for me, I have a different consciousness. Okay. Let me see how we're doing it time. Okay, 35. Okay, let's see. Can somebody, Sarang Prabhu or Ramkatha Prabhu, can you read out the verse and translation, please?
Sure, Prabhuji. Like
1642.
1642. Okay, sure, Prabhuji.
Yes, thank you.
King Chitraketu meets the Supreme Lord. 42. Only verse, Prabhuji, or translation and verse both?
Verse and translation, Prabhu.
Sure, Prabhuji. Srimad Bhagavatam 6:16-42. Kah keshmo nija parayo kiyan varta swapara druha dharmena swadroha tava kopa parasampidaya cha tatadharma. How can a religious system that produces envy of one's self and of others be beneficial for oneself and for them? What is auspicious about following such a system? What is actually to be gained? By causing pain to one's own self due to self envy and by causing pain to others, one arouses your anger and practices irreligion.
Thank you, Prabhu. So this verse is a clarification of the previous verse. So the previous verse had contrasted Bhagavad Dharma with other dharmas. Now Chitraketu is saying that with the exception of Bhagavad Dharma, all other varieties of dharmas will produce envy for the self and others. So the question that he puts is mostly rhetorical. And what is auspicious about following such a system? And he puts it as a question, but really it's a rhetorical question. He's basically saying there's no point in following such a system. So Prabhupada elaborates on this using the example of animal sacrifice. Right now, Prabhupada refers to animal sacrifice that is Vedic. So he says that it is given in the Vedas that one can sacrifice animals. But that does not mean that that is the highest form of dharma that the Vedas can give. The Vedas is giving it as a concession for the those people who are unable to control their senses. However, this type of dharma produces envy for the animal that is being killed. And it produces envy for the self also. Why envy for the self? Because one is now placing oneself into future suffering. So one is inflicting suffering on the animal, and because of the law of karma, one is also going to undergo personal suffering. And Prabhupada quotes many verses from 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, talks about the divine and demoniac nature. In the purport, Prabhupada says that if one follows a concocted system of religion, he is envious not only of others but also of himself. And then he quotes Dharmasvanasvasta Pumsha Vishvakshena Katha Suya Nautpade Vyatirati Shrameva hi Keval. That any dharma that does not result in increasing one's love for Krishna, Nautpade Yatirati Shrameva hi Keval. It's just useless endeavor. Okay. Next verse, Prabhu.
Sure, Prabhuji. 1643. न व्यभिचरति तवेक्षा यया हि अभिहितो भागवतधर्म स्थिरचरा सत्त्व कदाम्बेष्व अप्रतग्धियो याम् उपासतो त्वा त्वार्या. Translation. My dear Lord, one's occupational duty is instructed in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita according to your point of view, which never deviates from the highest goal of life. Those who follow their occupational duties under your supervision, being equal to all living entities, moving and non moving, and not considering high and low, are called Aryans. Such Aryans worship you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
So, Chitraketu, in his prayers, he had first began glorifying the powers of the Lord, verse 34 to 36. Then in 38 and 39, Chitraketu glorified the devotees, indirectly and directly. 40 to 43, and this is the last verse in that section, where Chitraketu glorifies the part of Bhagavad Dharma. Right? So in the translation, Prabhupada expands. So Prabhupada says that one's occupational duty is instructed in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Right? So Prabhupada essentially, you won't see these words in the shlok. There it says Abhito Bhagavad Dharma. So Prabhupada contextually expands Bhagavad Dharma as following the instructions as given in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So why do people follow Kami Dharma? Are they not aware that the results are temporary and full of faults? And Chitraketu says not really. They may be aware of all that, but the reason that people prefer Kamya Dharma over Nishkam Dharma is because Kamya Dharma delivers tangible results. Nishkam Dharma, even if it was delivering results, they are not tangible because they are a change in one's consciousness. So one who's following Kama Dharma, the person may become opulent or may become famous, and everybody can see that. A person who's following Nishkam Dharma, he may become detached, he may become surrendered to the Lord, Atmaram, but these are internal changes. So very difficult to see. However, Chitraketu says that the Lord's judgment is that the jiva becomes successful by following the path of bhakti. That does not ever change. So even when the Vedas are preaching Kamya Dharma, the conception that the Kamya Dharma is inferior to bhakti always stays. The results of Kamya Dharma are unsteady. But bhakti that is performed under the supervision of the Lord and his devotees is steady. Therefore, cultured people, he calls them Arya, follow the path of bhakti. And then Chitraketu says, let the uncultured people have their doubts. So these are the kamyas. He said, let them have their doubts. Cultured people have intelligence by which they do not see the difference in happiness and distress between oneself and others. Aprathak dhiya. So Vishwanath Chakravarti notes that it's interesting that the verse talks about Arya, and the meter of the verse is also Arya. Now, I don't know how that meter goes, but we'll take Chakravarti's word for it. Prabhupada gives two definitions of Bhagavad Dharma in the purport, right? So he says that Bhagavad Dharma and Krishna Katha are identical. So that's one definition that he gives. That uh, 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 chanting the glories of Krishna, Shavana Kirtana Smarana, so that's identical to Bhagavad Dharma. The second one that he gives is a little interesting. He said, therefore, Bhagavad Dharma is the same as Varnashram Dharma, right? And there, a little bit of context is probably needed to explain it. That what Prabhupada talks about here is Devi Varnashram Dharma, because the Karma Varnashram Dharma will fall in the category of Kamya Dharma. Right? Prabhupada won't equate that, but when he says the same as Varnashram Dharma, then especially when he says the four spiritual divisions, right? So he's talking about Devi Varnashram Dharma, where one is using their Varna and Ashram to render devotional service. Then Prabhupada explains the word Arya also, right? So Arya is the root word of Aryans, right? So there are some historians who say that the word Aryan refers to people that are from the northern part of India, whereas the people who are from the southern part of India are called Dravidians. However, Arya refers to a culture, not a region. Right? Some commentators say that since Valmiki was from the north, he was an Aryan, he wrote the Ramayana glorifying Ram. Had he been a Dravidian, he would have probably written glorifying Ravan. However, in Ramayana itself, we see that Ravan, in one of the dialogues, this is in Valmiki Ramayana, he is chastising Vibhishan. So when Vibhishan tells Ravan that you return Sita, then Ravan chastises Vibhishan saying, why are you behaving like an Anaryan? Right. So essentially, Ravan considers himself to be an Aryan, and because Vibhishan is opposing him, he says you're an Aryan. Right. So that refutes this whole theory of Aryans being north and not being south, etc. Then in 2.2 of Bhagavad Gita, we see that when Arjun says he won't fight, Krishna chastises Arjun. He says, Anarya justam asvargam. And he says, this is not benefiting a man who knows the value of life, Aryan, right? In Bhagavatam 119.1, Sutta Goswami states that when Parikshit Maharaj remembered that he had placed a snake around the neck of Shamik Rishi, he condemned himself, saying that Anarya Vatakritam, that I have acted like an Anaryan, right? Then there is also the Aryan invasion theory. It's a little bit of a detour. Like the Aryan invasion theory basically says that the people in India were originally Aryans in Europe, and they came through up north from the Siberian part of Russia, and they inhabited India. That theory has been mostly debunked. It actually came during the late 20th century, and part of it was because when uh, there was a greater awareness in the West about the sophistication of the culture in East, especially in India. They were actually found it very difficult to accept that any civilization could have advanced separate from being connected to the European civilization. So, in order to explain that, they said actually they were just Europeans who came, and that's how they brought with them the culture, and the original Europeans were actually the original Aryans were the Europeans. Srila Prabhupada in the purport talks about two qualities of the non-Aryans. One is he says that they do not follow the scriptures. Say, Nunam Pramata Kurute Vikrama. Their only business is to indulge in all kinds of forbidden activities for sense gratification. And the second quality that he says is that they misinterpret the scriptures. He says that one who misinterprets Bhagavad Gita, twisting out some meaning for his sense gratification, is a non-Aryan and should be rejected. Okay, next verse.
Yes, Prabhu. 44. Nahi Bhagavan agatitam yidam tvaddharshanan nrunam akhila papakshaya yannama sakrit shravanat pukashopi vimuchyate samsarat. My lord, it is not impossible for one to be immediately freed from all material contamination by seeing you. Not to speak seeing you personally, merely by hearing the holy name of your lordship only once, even Chandalas, men of the lowest class, are freed from all material contamination. Under the circumstances, who will not be freed from the material contamination simply by seeing you?
So, previously Chitraketu was speaking in theory. Now, he is glorifying the results of practicing Bhagavad Dharma by personally testifying his own case. So, Chitraketu says, my lord, it is not impossible for one to be immediately freed from all material contamination by seeing you. Right? So, this is Chitraketu's case, right? He is seeing the Lord face to face. Now, one may say that actually getting audience of the Lord is only reserved for those who are already free from all material contamination. So, in a way, it's just a theoretical statement. It's like in order to enter a college, you have to have an IQ of more than 150. And then the college says that the students in our, we make the students in our college with an IQ more than 150. But the fact is they only admit people more than 150. Same point is being made here. Like Chitraketu is saying that by seeing the Lord, one becomes free of material contamination. But then only one who is free of material contamination can see the Lord. So Chitraketu says that maybe, but the Lord and his name are not different. So even if one gets personal darshan of the Lord, just by associating with the name of the Lord, which is easily available, one can become freed of material contamination. Yeah. So Vishwanath Chakravarti, he gives 5 results of the chanting of the holy name. If just hearing one name, this happens. Right? So he is extracting the Sanskrit from the verse and talking about the 5 glories of the holy name that Chitraketu is referring to. First, he says, if just hearing one name, this happens. Right? This is one becomes freed of material contamination. What if one hears many names? If just by hearing the name this happens, what then if one actually chants the name? If just by chanting one name this happens, what then by chanting many, many times? If this happens even for the Chandal, what if a person is more advanced? And the fifth is, if the holy name delivers from the material world, then what of destroying all the sins? Right? And he says, oh, and one sees all this results in the stage of sadhana bhakti. So Prabhupada quotes Hare Nam eva kevalam, that one should consider the service of and then he also talks about deity worship in the purport. That the encounters that we have with the Supreme Lord in the material world are in the form of his name and form of his deity. That the deity of the Lord is not different from the Supreme Lord. And by decorating the deity, offering food to the deity, one gets the same result that one derives from personally serving the Lord in Vaikuntha. Okay, next verse, 45.
Yes, Prabhuji. अथ भगवान् वयम् अधुना त्वद् अवलोक परिमृष्ट आशयमलाः सुरऋषीणा यत् कथितं तावकेन कथम् अन्यथा भवति. Translation. Therefore, my dear Lord, simply seeing you has now wiped away all the contamination of sinful activities and their results of material attachment and lusty desires, which always filled my mind and the core of my heart. Whatever is predicted by the sage Narada Muni cannot be otherwise. In other words, I have obtained your audience as a result of being trained by Narada Muni.
So this is Chitraketu's humility. Like in the previous verse, one may think that Chitraketu is boasting, even though it's spiritual boasting. But there's a sense of boasting that I have acquired Bhagavad Dharma much better than all these Kamya devotees, and I have acquired your personal darshan. Here he is accepting that his success is only because of following the instructions of Narad Muni. Prabhupada says that this is the process of the perfect way. One must take lessons from authorities like Narad, Vyas, Asit, and follow their principles. Then one will be able to see the personality of Godhead. One only needs training. Right? Srila Prabhupada talks about the importance of proper training. Right? So anecdotal, there's once a conversation between an HR manager and the CEO of the company, and the HR manager was telling about the importance of training of the employees. So the CEO says that why give them so many trainings for such a long time? They may leave and it will be a waste of the company resources. So then the HR manager states that better for the trained people to leave than untrained people to stay back. Right. So the importance of um, training, and this is also to a great extent now becoming, I guess, an acknowledgement and focus in ISKCON also. The role of Shiksha Guru as opposed to Diksha Guru, the role of training. Um, yeah, for many devotees, Diksha is probably the only time they have real association of the Guru, or they may have it in a very limited way over the period of the entire spiritual life, and the whole conception of the Guru giving siksha becomes mitigated. Now, the Diksha Gurus are also obviously giving classes. Their Vani is there. They're sometimes writing books. They're giving classes, but it's generally for the larger populace. It's more preaching. But the tailored shiksha that forms the basis of the guru-disciple relationship, that role is being more and more taken up by shiksha gurus. Different names go by. Sometimes they're known as mentors, or different gurus call them by different names, but they essentially resonate with the mood of the gurus and Sri Prabhupada and take on this important role. But Chitraketu is talking about the importance, and Prabhupada is resonating with that, the importance of having that sense that I received I received training, and because of that, I am now successful. Okay, so we'll stop over here and see if there's any discussions.
Hare
Okay.
Krishna, Prabhu.
Huh?
Hare Krishna,
Yeah,
Prabhu.
yeah, please go ahead.
Just a small thing about the roasted seed analogy
Uh-huh.
earlier we made. So the analogy which states that the material desires which are offered to the Lord will be like roasted seeds, right? And they lose the potency for any growth or material. So we also, I don't know if it is on the Dhruva which we spoke about. Lord did fulfill material desires for Dhruva, right? Where they were not fully roasted. So how do we reconcile that principle where the desires are nullified or desires were fully fulfilled?
So you're right, Prabhu. They were fully fulfilled, but not for the benefit of Dhruva. Because Dhruva, as far as Dhruva is concerned, not only did he say that I'm ashamed of my material desires, I don't want any, but the fact that he had performed devotional service under the instructions of his guru, had got the mercy of the Lord, that itself was testimony of the fact that he was without material desires. But as Vishnu Chakravarti explains, that the Lord fulfilled the material desires for the benefit of the materialists. That when
Mhm.
somebody listens to Dhruv Katha and then sees that the Lord awarded all this long life, kingdom, all the material desires that Dhruva had, that the Lord fulfilled and more, then they will take to. I mean, if for instance, if Lord had said, "Okay, you don't have any material desires, give up your body and come back to me in Vaikuntha," right? And then somebody else who is not practicing bhakti would say that very dangerous to go to Vishnu. Right? He'll kill you right away. So they look at it more from the external perspective. Right? So it was more for attracting those who have mixed desires to the process of bhakti.
Thank you. Actually, I have two questions still. I don't have time for this.
Go ahead, Prabhu. Please go ahead.
So one is the envy of self, which we discussed about it. Uh, how to structure this? What does it mean exactly? Basically, envy of self, right? Is this internal conflict or the self-loathing, like where we couldn't unable to control the senses or the future suffering one incurs through bad karma?
Yes, it is internal. It is uh, so the nature of envy is the desire to harm,
Mm-hmm.
and activities that are material by nature, especially the context that was used is like performing animal sacrifice. So even though they're performed under the auspices of the Vedas, they also come with a disclaimer saying that fine, you can perform this, you will get this out of this, but you will have to suffer the consequences. And like medicine, it comes and says, you take this, it will cure this disease, but then there's a long list of that it can cause dizziness, this, right? There's a small fine print of 25
Mm.
million other things that happen. And generally people don't read it, or if they read it, they'll gloss over it because the primary function that they're looking for is delivered by medicine. So similarly, these sacrifices, they will give some primary benefit. They may give a son or a wealth or a marriage. But then they're also aware that I will have to suffer the consequences of killing animals or performing materialistic activities, which is essentially being trapped in the cycle of samsara, which is harming the soul. I mean, which is not where the soul wants to be. So that's why it's categorized as envy of the self.
Mm. Thank you, Prabhu. So the third is like it's only a basic thing. Like we spoke about Aryan, but I couldn't digest what Aryan is. Is it like spiritually one who sees equality in all beings under God's supervision?
The literal meaning of Aryan is one who knows,
Yeah.
right? And contextually, it means one who knows the Vedas. So that's the Sanskrit word, and like I mentioned, that the word originated in Vedic Sanskrit. It was later adopted by the Indologists, and then it was absorbed in the European culture, the Western culture, right? And they came up with different Aryan invasion theory, etc. But from a Vedic context, Arya means, or Aryan means the wise man or a man who knows the scriptures.
Mm.
That's what it stands for.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll end here. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय। शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। जय गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरे हरे कृष्ण। Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.